Good morning, viewers and listeners out there. I'm your host, Ako Christian Ocha, live from COPDEM Media TV. Before we go on with this morning program, please remember to subscribe to COPDEM Media TV and have first-time information as regards to any breaking news. This morning on Insightful Morning Show, we'll be looking into a number of social political issues, particularly President Tinubu is being viewed from different perspectives. Some are viewing him as the next Nicolas Maduro, and some are viewing as the next Goodluck Jonathan. Which pathway will President Tinubu choose come 2027? Because all odds seem to be against him, as the united opposition front are rallying against his presidency come 2027. Of course, number two, the Minister of Defense has come under heavy criticism for his loud speech across news, making the headline and a lot of comments. But on the ground, he's not seen to be acting. As a matter of fact, Okoro called him out, asking him what happened to the list of terror sponsors of over 400 names that were submitted to him by an international community that listed all the persons involved in sponsorship of terrorism in Nigeria. They asked him what has happened to the list. What has he done? Who is still moving freely? What is his position? What has he been able to do in order to end terrorism in Nigeria? That he talks too much and they need to see more action. Then number three is where is the president? Recall that Mr. Tinubu, His Excellency, has queried the whereabouts of the president, demanded that he should be seen attending to the Nigerian needs, not hiding from action. So, as it is, Nigerians are not aware of the exact location of Mr. President. So, we are calling to know where is the president. He fought heavily to be in Asoro. As a matter of fact, he manipulated his way into Asoro. So, he should be seen doing the job, not just masquerading around known location across the globe. That cannot continue, be allowed to continue rather. So all Nigerians should wake up and ask, where is the president? We don't want the situation of another Yaradua scenario. The president must be able to address Nigerians on burning national issues. He should be seen attending to the needs of the Nigerian people, particularly this era of insecurity and terrorism that is ravaging Nigeria. The president should be able to address Nigeria on the day-to-day activities of the armed forces and how they are able to manage the situation. Not hiding somewhere unknown to Nigerians and speaking through proxies. Nigeria did not elect special advisor or presidency. Nigeria voted for human beings that should be there to represent and speak to the people. That's the essence of creation of power. And Nigerian Super Eagles, we wish you good luck, because they'll be taking on Morocco today in the ongoing AFCON Nations Cup. You understand? The Super Eagles remain unbeaten in the last games of the AFCON tournament. So we are looking forward to a very successful outing later in the day against Morocco. Morocco has also maintained consistency. As a matter of fact, in the past 25 games, they've not lost any. They've been able to win 19 games and draw 6 games. So that was a very, very solid form any team can ever have. And of course, they are going to be facing the Super Eagles of Nigeria. They have remained very solid throughout this African Cup of Nations. As a matter of fact, people are going to ask, is it the same team that failed to qualify for the World Cup that is playing the nations team? I mean, Nigeria are going to ask, is it the same team that were struggling to score a goal in a game that are now bashing their opponents with margin of goals, 2, 3, 4 goals in a game. I mean, it's unbelievable, but that's football. So it's a renewed energy by the players and a renewed determination to bring back the trophy to the Nigerian people. They have always been very solid fans of the Super Eagles, of course. And 2027, COPDEM has launched a very credible tool, which is the VoteGuard app. The VoteGuard app aims to upload results in real time directly from the polling unit without necessarily waiting for INEC manipulation at the collation center, which with the help of the VoteGuard app, Nigerians and the global community will be aware of the exact situation at the polling unit in real time, not waiting for any minutes or seconds or hours or days where manipulation takes place at the collation center. Now it's in real time, and that is what COPDEM is bringing to the table. Kudos to all who are involved and the engineers that have dedicated their time and resources to bring about this wonderful innovation. And of course, they also be using it for this area council election in the FCT, ensuring that results are uploaded in real time. There's a wonderful development, and kudos to all that are involved. Also, there's a very troubling situation ongoing in Iran, where the Iranians have occupied the street for the past 2 weeks. And this has led to the death of over 12,000 protesters. This is historic margin that over 12,000 persons will be killed in 2 days. The regime is under heavy scrutiny by the international community as well as criticism for her handling of protesters. And of course, this is a war crime against humanity. We are calling on the entire global community to call out the Iranian regime for this wanton death toll that is coming out from the Iranian people. How can you kill over 12,000 protesters for demanding freedom? The people, of course, have the power to demand for a shift from theocracy to democracy. That is what the people want, and the will of the people must be seen to be respected. So on this note, we are calling on Ayatollah to respect the will of the people and step aside before he eventually gets disgraced from office. We saw what happened to Nicolas Maduro, who insisted on being occupying the office illegally since 2013. And of course, you saw how he has been disgraced out of power. So leaders should learn from happenings across the globe that nobody is an island, nobody is an island rather. And we cannot continue to mislead the people. We cannot continue to hold on the people to hostage. In 2025, of course, the global community will come for you. And that is what is definitely bound to happen, as the international community are already calling on the United States as well as in Israel to come and intervene for the Iranian people. It is on this note that we continue to the commentary for today. There's a commentary that has been prepared on a book that was written by Peter M. Peter M. has written a book on growing apart, and he actually gave a very clear demonstration about the Nigerian situation and Indonesia. Peter Lewis wrote this book in order to make a comparative analysis of two nations that started almost at the same pace with similar population growth, similar religious, as a matter of fact, Indonesia is over 90% Muslims and 10% the other religion. So he made comparison in terms of population size and economic potential of these two countries. The two countries have oil and other mineral resources that can be justified as their own natural resources. So he made this comparison to find out how both have equal opportunity to be able to grow, while one is growing on the positive direction, the other one is growing on the negative direction. That's the case, and I'll take a review of Peter M. Lewis on growing apart. Growing apart provides one of the most comprehensive comparative political economy analysis of two major oil-producing developing countries, Nigeria and Indonesia in this instance. Although both nations began the post-colonial period with similar structural conditions, right? Large populations, agrarian economy, economy that depends on agriculture, heavy dependence on commodity exports. These commodities have to export to other countries to be able to gain foreign direct income. And of course, a significant ethnic diversity. There's ethnic diversity in these both countries, and their development trajectories diverged sharply. Of course, developmental trajectory differ sharply over decades. How these two countries are able to grow in different directions became very divergent in very sharp manner. It is on this note that we're taking a further look into it, and Lewis' core argument is that political institutions and allied conditions or coalitions, not culture of resource endowment alone, were the decisive forces behind the divergence in growing, according to Peter M. Lewis. He noted that political institution and allied coalition, that is allied, what we otherwise known as rich people in Nigeria, they have a coalition. They have forum where they meet, they discuss, they agree on terms. So these institutions, as well as political institutions in Nigeria, come together to determine resource control, as well as they don't really, culture in this instance, in Nigeria particularly, not really a factor of resource control. A light coalition, that's why you see corrupt person from the southeast, corrupt person from the north, corrupt person from the southwest, corrupt person from north central, northeast, even south, all they have a bond together, which is to continue to rip off the people's resources. Also, political institution is a key determinant, according to Peter Lewis. He noted that political determinants, that is, for instance, people who share the same political party are bound to engage in an organized deferment of state resources, organized corruption, right? They go into acts of defrauding the states of scarce resources. Lewis argues that Indonesia managed to construct more coherent and centralized political institutions. That is one step that Indonesia took that is different from the Nigerian approach. They took a step to centralize their political institutions, especially under Suharto's New Order regime, where he emphasized the political stability, right? Even though authoritarian created a structured environment where economic technocrats were empowered to design consistent macroeconomics policies, right? This is from the angle of Indonesia. They empowered technocrats, economic technocrats, to be able to develop policies that work for their country. While in the case of Nigeria, by contrast, there's a sharp deviation from what is obtainable in Indonesia. In the case of Nigeria, a sharp contrast suffered from unstable and fragmented political institutions. Unstable, fragmented political institutions. The constant cycle of coups, that is, coups has affected the economic stability of Nigeria, the economic policies, government come, government go, who come and disrupt the flow of government, which leads to change of policies. Transitions, each government coming up with a policy, the next government discontinue that policy, coming up with reasonable policy. This is disruption and transition that equally affected the economic growth of Nigeria. Of course, ethnic-based rivalry, right? Ethnic-based rivalry, different tribes wanting to be in charge, and where their tribesman, in quotes, is in power, they feel everything is doing have to be supported. You understand the instance of President Muhammadu Buhari, as then when he was disrupting the economy with bad government policies, he was heavily supported by Northerners on grounds that he's a Northerner. So that is where Peter Lewis was emphasizing when he mentioned ethnic-based rivalries. Of course, weak civilian rule prevented the formation of long-term duration developmental policies, right? Weak civilian rule, civilian rules seem to lack enough power in terms of exerting their will on the Nigerian people, which led to a formation of inability to form long-term economic policies that could develop the country. And elites could not maintain credible commitments to investors or technocrats. And policy making became episode and inconsistent. So because of this, the elites failed in maintaining credible commitments to investors or technocrats, and this affected policy making. Of course, it became an episode of inconsistency. So number two, another comparison that Lewis made, he said divergent economic policies and outcomes. Divergent economic policies and outcomes. Indonesia, one, pursued pragmatic macroeconomic policies. That is what Indonesia faced. Macroeconomic policies that brought about the massive development of their country. Whereas Indonesia also went further to encourage long-term investments. Long-term investments, not the Nigerian situation where focuses on short-term, medium-term, short-term investment. No, Indonesia focused on long-term investments, maintain currency and fiscal discipline. Currency and fiscal discipline. They were able to manage their currency in such a way that it continued to appreciate in value. But in the case of Nigeria, it's the other way around. Nigerian government was busy devaluing the currency, devaluing it, right? Diversified into agriculture. Remember, Indonesia even came to Nigeria to pick up some seeds of palm kernel, which they took to Indonesia to plant all over their country, and today they are exporter of red oil. That's it. They came to Nigeria to pick up this seed. Today, they've been exporter of red oil, unlike the case of Nigeria. We've not been able to develop our agricultural sector. We've not been able to develop our red oil production into a massive scale industrial production. It's still being done at individual basis production level, which is not good enough for the image of the country. We should be seen to be productive economy, not a fragmented individual effort productive economy. We should be seen to be productive heavily. where companies will go into production of this red oil, for instance, because there is massive harvest by these farmers. So the government should take the step to be able to plant more palm kernel to be able to yield more products yielding from these palm kernel trees. Of course, be able to embark on manufacturing. When you're able to produce more, you'll be able to set up manufacturing companies, and of course, which will lead to exportation of products from your country. Nigeria depended heavily on importation, whereas Indonesia, they're able to develop their country and they produce whatever they consume, they're able to export to other countries as well. So this is a slap on the Nigerian government on what to do. So let me emphasize that Indonesia succeeded not because it avoided corruption. Not the success of Indonesia was not basically because they were able to avoid corruption. That's what Lewis is saying. But because the state managed the corruption in a centralized, predictable way, right? Rent seeking was tolerated, but channeled into developmental priorities and domestic reinvestments. That is, they understand that they cannot completely stop corruption. So what happens when individuals take government funds? You are left with no option than to reinvest it into the economy. And this is how it had a long-term it had a long-term influence, effect rather, on the Indonesia economy. Compared to the Nigerian situation now, we have people who have stolen public funds from Nigeria, they convert it to dollars and take it outside the shores of this country to go and develop other countries. Even till this moment, we still have Abacha loans being returned from the UK and other parts of the world. So these are some of the things that Lev is talking about. The Nigerian state have not been able to manage the corruption. Nigerian funds, if they are being tied down to development of Nigeria, for instance, persons who have stolen public funds should be able to set up industry in their respective local communities across the states. Then they have a development of the economy. Take, for instance, Dangote, for instance. Of course, there may be proceed of corrupt public wealth in Dangote's company, but the positive impact that has on the Nigerian economy is that these funds are being used to set up companies in Nigeria. And of course, the Dangote refinery today is serving the interests of the country at large and is serving as a source of employment for thousands and thousands of Nigerian people. So this is what John Lewis is talking about, that the Indonesia government was able to manage their corruption in such a way that even when you steal for public fund, you cannot take it outside the shores of Indonesia. You must invest it on the Indonesian soil, which in the long run have a positive impact on the Indonesia economy. But in the case of Nigeria, Nigerians are good in looting from the government and taking it to other countries to go and develop other countries. There are assertions that Switzerland, UK, United States, and other countries of the world, including Dubai, all their development came from the starch funds Nigerians stole from Nigerians, Nigerian politicians stole from Nigerian government and invested in those countries. Those are the funds they are using to turn around their economy, right? But in the case of Nigeria, Nigerian politicians hardly invest in Nigeria. And that is why the country keeps on sinking. So there is no long-term benefits of these stolen funds to benefit the Nigerian masses in setting up industry that will be beneficial to the people. So he's focused on Nigeria now in terms of these developmental trials that I was analyzing that over-relied on oil revenues. Nigerian government failed to diversify the economy. While Indonesia had oil, they were processing it, selling it. They were able to use the funds to set up the agricultural sector, for instance. There are other sectors like tourism sector. They were able to invest heavily on setting up multiple relaxation spots that could boost their tourism, right? They're able to boost the agricultural sector with the funds that come in from oil. That is diversification. But they're able to use that same funds to establish good schools, good hospitals, and a whole lot of government infrastructure. But in the case of Nigeria, those funds are not used to develop the economy. Rather, they were stolen, taken to the foreign countries. So Nigeria failed to diversify to the point that many countries today are discovering oil, finding no need to come and buy from Nigerian oil. Of course, the price of oil keep on dwindling, falling and rising, falling and rising. And when that happens, it affects the Nigerian government ability to be able to service her budget efficiently. So failure to diversify is a huge problem that is responsible for the failure of the Nigerian government and neglected agricultural and manufacturing sector. Yes, the Nigerian government neglected the agricultural sector, they neglected the manufacturing sector. Previously, in the 70s, in the 60s, and 80s, there were companies that were functioning in Kaduna. Kaduna used to be the hub of textile industry. Of course, there was massacre, textile industry in massacre, textile industry in Kakuri, textile industry in various locations across Kaduna and even Kano State. They were busy producing, right? There was Peugeot in Kaduna as well that provided services to the Nigerian people. There was Volkswagen production hub in Ibadan. So all these different production sectors were left to die. There was potato cement previously, but today where is potato cement? It's nowhere to be found. It has been killed by the Nigerian government. So these are the things that Peter Lewis was talking about on how government neglected the agricultural and the manufacturing sector. The manufacturing sector did not just die a natural death, it died because lack of power. Power is used for productivity, and when the government cannot provide power, of course, the industry is bound to fail, and that is what happened in the manufacturing sector. You don't expect the manufacturing sector, for instance, to depend on powering their plants with generators, right? That is cost-inducing, and it makes goods that are produced in other countries to be cheaper than goods produced in Nigeria, which need to work. Patronage of foreign-made goods. So these are some of the things. And failure to invest in technology. While Indonesia invested heavily in technology through their schools, Nigerian government failed to invest in technology. They will not be able to invest in schools. As a matter of fact, over 65% of Nigerian schools, roughly estimated, have no sitting chairs. In primary school, no chairs. Even in the university, you see a whole number of people standing in the hall, lecture hall. There are not enough sitting arrangements. How much more equipment? So these are the things that are affecting and made the Nigerian economy in this comparison of Indonesia and Nigeria. While Indonesia is going on a positive direction, Nigeria is going on the negative direction. And that is how it centered the book on growing apart. Of course, he also mentioned how the Nigerian government failed to stabilize the macroeconomic policies. The policy of the Nigerian government has not been able to help the macroeconomies, which led to the devastation of the productive sectors. So he also mentioned how the frequent debt crisis. Of course, you see, Tinubu came on board to continue from the debt profile left behind by Muhammadu Buhari. He has doubled and tripled the Nigerian debt profile, and this debt profile has a negative consequences on the Nigerian economy, particularly the power, the strength of the naira. It has been devalued severally. to the point that the naira to dollar is about 1,600 naira. Previously, during 2015, 2014, thereabout, the naira to dollar was no more than 300 naira to a dollar. But today, you can see where they left it. 1,600. There was a time it rose up to 1,900, 1,800 to a dollar. How do we expect production to fly in this type of economy? So these are the heavyweights that the Nigerian government have allowed the people to suffer. In Nigeria, corruption was decentralized and competitive. And I can assure even the people are responsible. The people are guilty of this. The Nigerian people also applaud corruption. That is what His Excellency Mr. Tinubu described as wealth without enterprise. You know someone who is working in a company, for instance, or in a government setting, his salary is not more than a particular amount. Let's say, for instance, his whole salary put together is no more than 150,000 naira. But he comes back home with some huge amount of money to buy some particular expensive vehicles, and the Nigerian people will applaud him. They'll praise him that he's wealthy. But wealth, where is the trace of the wealth? Wealth without enterprise. Wealth that is not commensurate to your income. That's the Nigerian situation. So, with political elites siphoning resources abroad, these funds are stashed and taken abroad. And when they go to abroad, they just dump it in their foreign banks account. And the government of those countries will be using it for production. Using it for production to develop their own local economy, whereas the Nigerian economy is suffering. You see how Nigeria successfully underdeveloped ourselves. The result was capital flights. Yes. The capital resources that will have been used for the mass development of the country have been taken abroad, otherwise known as capital flights. Eroded state capacity. So states that lack the capacity. During his tenure, His Excellency Mr. Tinubu was able to save $75 million. He was able to save for a number of state governments, having done all he needed to do as a state governor, and he last the time to continue with further projects. He saved this money aside, such that the incoming government will not suffer or lack resources to move the state forward. He also saved $150 million in accounts, aside from investment in companies that today yielding money to another state government. So this is how to think. This is how to stabilize the economy. There should be saving for rainy day, but the Nigerian government have failed to save. They've not been able to save over the years. Rather, they've been leaving behind, successful government have been leaving behind and accumulating debt for the future government. And that is how we continue with the cycle. And stagnant growth. How can that be? There cannot be growth where there is massive looting, massive corruption, massive debt profile. There cannot be growth. So patterns of corruption. Lewis does not romanticize Indonesia. Yes, it was very clear. He acknowledged extensive elite corruption under Suharto. Suharto regime was marred with massive corruption. However, his comparative point is that while in Indonesia, there is an organized corruption that these funds don't leave the shores of Indonesia, rather they are invested in Indonesia to develop small, medium-scale enterprises and different productive sector. In Nigeria, they are fragmented and competitive. These funds are taken abroad go and store in foreign bank accounts, which lead to the development of Nigeria and the development of Indonesia, right? Predictability. Yeah, the Indonesia developmental stride was predictable because they were saving, they were investing on their local economy, they were investing on agriculture, they were investing on the economy, they were investing on science and technology, they were investing on education, health, they were investing on tourism. So it's obvious and predictable that Indonesia was on the ladder, rising and rising and rising. Whereas in the case of Nigeria, it's chaotic. We go to bed, no hope, no focus, no expectation of the next line of action of the Nigerian government. If we wake up and tell us A, the next day they will wake up and tell us B. They are not predictable. So Indonesia's government is centralized. Everything is centralized. Funds from Indonesia do not travel out of the country, are not taken to any foreign land, are all used to develop the local economy. But in Nigeria is decentralized. Individuals take these funds, foreign countries to go and invest and develop other countries, whereas in Nigeria, keep on going down, keep on going down. So we reinvented domestically. Yes, the Indonesian government was able to reinvent herself domestically through pumping in capital into SME, such that small-scale medium enterprises were able to spring up across various parts of Indonesia. But in Nigeria, there are SMEs who are looking for funds today to be able to grow their businesses, but they don't have access to capital. And the Bank of Industry, the Bank of Agriculture, they are meant to provide these funds, are also conniving with the elites and releasing these funds to them to go and run their campaign. Releasing these funds to them, which elites particularly are not people who are patient to grow any business. So that approach has not helped the Nigerian government, has not helped the Nigerian economy. So thus, while both states were corrupt, yes, they share the same similarity. Indonesia and Nigeria were both corrupt. Only Indonesia could convert corruption into partially developmental outcomes, because funds from Indonesia don't leave the country. They are used to develop the economy locally. But in Nigeria, corrupt government officials are able to take these funds and fly out of their country. So oil seeking and state capacity. Lewis argues that oil wealth intensified pre-existing political tendencies. Indonesia, on the other hand, oil revenue strengthened the central states, allowing allies to control rents and direct investors into infrastructural education and some industrialization. That's in the case of Nigeria. This grew state capacity rather than eroding it. So that's for Indonesia now. Then in Nigeria, oil rent destabilizes politics by fueling patronage, battles between military factions, ethnic region, and civilian elites, instead of strengthening state institutions. The oil further weakened administrative capacity of government and undermined bureaucratic professionalism, as well as created a predatory rent-seeking system. What is he talking about here? You saw Saeed Okubo being given a contract of, these guys for the Niger Delta being given contract to safeguard the oil pipeline and all that. These are ordinarily tasks that should be performed by the civil defense. They are to protect the government facilities against sabotage. But here we are, the government rolling out billions and billions of naira to private individuals. So The government of Nigeria is individual against strengthening government institutions. Economic diversification versus dependency. While in Indonesia, they're able to develop their economy, develop the human capital of their citizens. But in Nigeria, the reverse is the case. They do not develop the Nigerian economy. Rather, these oil resources are stolen and taken to foreign land. So these are some of the comparative analyses that Lewis was able to make. We already made an instance of political coalition and developmental outcome here. A central argument in Lewis' analysis is that allies, our coalition, have shaped economic development. That is, it has impact on economic development. In Indonesia, a stable ruling coalition, military plus technocrats, that stable ruling coalition, supported long-term policies. In Nigeria, allied coalitions were suitable, allied coalitions were unstable, short-term, and intensely competitive, and undermining coherent policies. That's where they say the rich man is above the law, right? They use the state resources to suppress government institutions, and they become the law. So the difference explains why Indonesia achieved several decades of growth, while Nigeria suffered cycle of boom and bust. Nigeria had at the time a problem of spending, where President, the former head of state, Governor Yakubu Gowon, stated that the Nigerian problem is not resources, but how to spend it. And of course, that's what elites meant when they say Nigeria suffers a cycle of boom. During the oil boom, Nigeria could not manage the wealth, so it busted. When it busted into private hands. And today, they have taken those wealth into a foreign land to develop other countries, whereas Nigeria is suffering. Indonesia grew because, one, political power was centralized and stable. Two, technocrats influenced economic policies. Three, corruption was predictable and periodically reinvested. Yes, persons who have stolen from the government of Indonesia, periodically over the years, they end up reinvesting it into the Indonesian economy because they cannot take it out of the Indonesia country. But in Nigeria, these funds are stolen and taken to foreign land to go and develop other countries. Nigeria stagnated because, he also went further to state why Indonesia was able to develop because the economy diversified. Nigeria failed to diversify economy. In Nigeria, Nigeria is stagnated because, one, political institutions were fragmented and unstable, right? Periodic after few years, 4 years, 2 years, government come, government go, and they don't seem to continue with these policies that were initiated by previous administration. So elites pursued short-term extraction, not development. So elites are more interested in what they could achieve within shorter period of stay in office. Projects that they can be able to start and commission within their own circle of government. They are not interested in policies and projects that can have a long-term effect on the country developmental growth. So corruption encouraged capital flights. With massive corruption in Nigeria, there's capital flight. These funds are stolen and started to foreign lands. So the economy remained dependent on oil. They continue to depend on oil resources so that they continue to sell the crude oil and steal the resources. That's what they have been doing over the years, no development. That's why you see each Nigerian government, each Nigerian person that comes on board wants to be Minister of Petroleum so that they continue to steal these funds unchecked. Nobody checks them, nobody supervises, nobody asks them any question. They just steal the wealth of the country as they wish. And of course, Mr. Peter said, should he become president, he would rather become Minister of Security. Others have actually always gone for Minister of Petroleum, and he's not going for Minister of Petroleum. Rather, he will go for Minister of Security, right? Minister of Defense, rather. So you see a difference between who is a leader and who has come to steal. Those who have come to steal have always focused on Minister of Petroleum. But Mr. Peter has said he is coming on board to focus on as Minister of Defense to defend the territorial integrity of Nigeria. So, thus, Lewis concludes that institutions and political behavior, not natural resources themselves, explain why two similar countries grew apart. It is on this note I come to the end of today's Insightful Morning Show. Thank you for following up with these points. And remember to subscribe to COPDEM Media TV, and do have a lovely, lovely day ahead of you. We look forward to a country where Nigerian resources can be used to develop the country and the economy of Nigeria and emancipate the people out of the poverty that we are currently facing in this country. No Nigerian deserves to go to bed hungry because we have more than enough. His Excellency Mr. Tinubu has always been very clear on how Nigeria could be able to feed ourselves and export to other countries, on how Nigeria should be able to produce for ourselves and export to other countries. It all boils down to production. We have to run a productive economy, otherwise we all perish. Thank you for staying true. I'm your host, Mr. Ako Christian Ochen. Do have a lovely day out of you. Remember to subscribe to COPDEM Media TV. Thank you. God bless.